Welcome back. We're now at lesson 13B. In the next preview assignment and in the next class, you will need to be able to distinguish observational studies from experimental studies. I've been reminding you to start flashcards or a glossary or a Google document, something where you're keeping up with all of these words. And here are a couple of more words that you need to add to that list. Looking first at observational study. Researchers observe behaviors or they measure something. Let's get that back down again. They're going to observe behaviors or they're going to measure. In this type of study, researchers gather data in order to make inferences. That needs to be its own flashcard, to make inferences about a study and inferences about the study participants. There is no treatment given to the different groups or participants. You need to highlight, underline, hit pause, think on this, really let observational study details soak in. The following are examples of observational studies. You will be asked to analyze the characteristics of these studies. So now is a great time to hit pause. You complete questions 1, 2, and 3, and then come back and we'll walk through them together. So now looking at question number 1, and it's talking about study number 1. Researchers recorded the blood pressure of community members at a health fair on campus. And they found that most community members had normal blood pressure. So a couple of really good questions to think at and make sure you fully understand. Looking at part A, who are the study participants in this study number 1? And so let's be very descriptive and say it is the community members at a health fair. And if you even want to say it's at a health fair on campus, but at least community members at a health fair, because that can impact your study. If they were already at a health fair, then that's already a determined set of participants. We'll talk more about that later, but it's the community members at a health fair. Part B, what is the variable? What is the thing that varies in study number 1? Is this variable quantitative or categorical? So let's start with what is the variable. I'm going to change colors, and it says they recorded right here. The variable is the blood pressure. They recorded blood pressure. And then the question continues, is it quantitative or categorical? And remember, quantitative is going to have number. It's numerical, and blood pressure has number. Part C, did the researchers apply a treatment? And if they did, describe the treatment. And there is no treatment. And this needs to be really, really clear that if we are just doing an observational study, then there will be no treatment on any of the ones that we're looking at that are for observational. So going on to question number 2, and it's about study number 2. And it's a good practice, like when you're working on a test or anything, to go ahead and read the questions before reading the actual information you're given. And notice they're going to ask us the same information or same question. They want to know who are the participants. And they want to know what is the variable. And is it quantitative or categorical? And did they apply a treatment in this study? With that in mind, let's read the paragraph a bit more informed. A student club surveyed students on campus to see how satisfied they were with the variety and the types of entree choices in the school cafeteria. Students were asked what kind of entrees they would like the cafeteria to offer. So who are the study participants? Well, they surveyed students on this particular campus. So it's students at this school, and write that here. Part B, what is the variable? They were looking at different types of entree choices. And so the variable would be entree choices. And so quantitative and categorical, they can kind of go both ways. But earlier, remember I mentioned if we can put stuff in buckets. And if you could put the different types of choices in buckets, then we're going to call this categorical. And then finally, did the researchers apply a treatment? And we're under observational, so we don't even really have to look at this one, but we'll go ahead and answer it. No, they did not apply a treatment. This is an observational study. And this is our last study under the observational heading. So if you haven't already hit pause and worked on it, this is a great time to hit pause and make sure you do at least one of these, excuse me, by yourself. So on study number 3, again, they want to know who are the participants. What is the variable? Is the variable quantitative or categorical? And was a treatment applied? Well, if this is observational, we already know that the answer is no, but let's read it to be sure. It says your school analyzed the time to graduation of all students from the past 10 years. Whew. In order to understand the trends of student completion. So the question of part A is, who are the study participants? And we want to be descriptive, and it would probably be best if we said students. We don't know the name of the school, but students at this school or the school, but in particular, students from the past 10 years. So that's a mouthful, but that's the who that we'll be studying, or who they studied. Part B, what is the variable? The variable in this one is, and let me get a different color, right here. The time to graduation. And with it being time, that's numerical. So this is going to be a quantitative variable. We already knew the answer to part C, but we'll go ahead and play along here. Did the researchers apply a treatment? No, this is observational. So now this lesson moves to experimental studies. Again, you need to make sure you've got flashcards started or your glossary, some way that you're tabbing this information, but it's sticking out for you. Like, here goes another really big concept to learn for this course. And it's talking about experimental study. And in an experimental study, researchers manipulate. There it is. Researchers manipulate something to investigate if there is an effect. In this type of study, researchers apply a treatment. Sound familiar? For some of the study participants, not all, but for some, in order to make inferences, again, another word that you need to have as a flashcard or tabbed, to make inferences about a treatment. The following are examples of experimental studies. So all of them are going to have a treatment. You're going to be asked to analyze the characteristics of these studies. So now is the perfect time for you to hit pause, go look at questions 4, 5, and 6, and then come back and we'll work on them together. So starting with study 4, under our experimental studies, it still is a great habit to read the questions before you read the body of the paragraph. Again, it wants to know who are in the study. And then, oh, here's going to be another word to tab, another word to put on your glossary or flashcards. A response variable is the data collected from participants in the study after some treatment. And so I'm going to go over here and even draw an XY coordinate plane. And then down here, I'm going to put treatment variable. And over here, I'm going to put response variable. We've talked about independent and dependent. So treatment is independent, but the response is dependent on the treatment. And so the way they're asking this is, what is the response variable in this study? And then again, they're asking, is it going to be a quantitative or a categorical variable? And then part C wants to know, did they apply a treatment? And is it okay if I write the word duh here? Because this is experimental. Yes, there's going to be a treatment. And so this time on all the ones that we do, we'll need to describe the treatment. So now let's go read the paragraph. In order to determine the effects of walking on student levels of stress, researchers randomly divided the students in a health class into two groups. The researchers told one group to walk 1 mile every day for an entire month, and they told the other group to walk 5 miles every day for an entire month. At the end of the month, the students were surveyed on their stress levels using a 5-point rating scale. So the first question, who are the participants in the study? So let me grab a different color. Who, they're right here. Who, it's the students in a health class. And again, that could even create some bias in our study, which we're not even talking about bias yet, because they're already in a health class. So part B, a response variable. What is the response variable? And is this a quantitative or a qualitative variable? And so the response at the end of this month, the students are going to complete a 5-point rating scale. I don't know a short way to say that. Maybe let's do it this way. Let's say stress level is the response. Either I have a low response, a stress level, or a high stress level, but we're going to measure it on this 5-point rating scale. With that being said, they're going to call it categorical because it sounds like you're going to be able to score a 1 or a 2 or a 3, and you're not going to be able to have anything in between. However, I've mentioned earlier that our variables can bounce back and forth, and it might be that quantitative is a possibility where we can average the responses. We can do all sorts of stuff where we could even end up with like a 1.2 or a 1.3. For right now, let's treat this one as categories or buckets. My level is a 1 or my level is a 2. And then, did the researchers apply a treatment? And you're like, why, yes, they did. And one group was to walk 1 mile a day for a month, and the other group was to walk 5 miles a day. There are two different groups. We'll leave it at that and move on to question 5. So now looking at question 5, which is study 5, looking at the questions before we even look at a paragraph. Who are the study participants? What is the response variable from the treatment? And is it quantitative or categorical? And then finally, did the researchers apply a treatment? So the answer is going to be yes. You and I just have to go find out what the treatment is or was for their experiment. So 5th grade students at the local elementary school, 5th grade students at the local elementary school are randomly divided into two groups. One group is taught math using traditional techniques, and the other group is taught math using a reform method. After 1 year, each group is given an achievement test. So who are the study participants? Right here, 5th grade students. And if we knew the name of the local elementary, we could write at and then mention the name of the school, but it's 5th grade students. So what is the response variable? And so I like to draw an X and Y axis. And so they're teaching math, and then they're going to take an achievement test. And so math is going to be the treatment, The achievement test is going to be the response. So what is the response variable? Well, it's going to actually be the score on the achievement test. And is that going to be categorical or quantitative? And in this case, a score is numerical, so it's going to be quantitative. Did they apply a treatment? Yes. And the treatment would be that some students received math using traditional techniques, and versus or in addition to, or not in addition, but the other group, oops, go away. But the other group had math using a reform method. We have one more to look at, one more experimental study. So here we go with question number 6. So finally, number 6 is study number 6. You probably have already figured out they're going to ask about the participants. They're going to ask about the response variable, whether it's quantitative or categorical, and then they're going to ask if there was a treatment applied. So I'll go ahead and answer it and say yes, because this is an experimental study. So let's start looking for the who and the response and what type it is. In 1747, James Lind conducted a medical trial in order to find a cure for scurvy. In his study, he divided 12 sailors suffering from scurvy, 12 sailors suffering from scurvy, into 6 groups of 2 men each. He gave each of the 6 groups a different remedy for an entire week. One of the treatments was to eat 2 oranges and 1 lemon every day. Another treatment was to drink half a pint of seawater every day. I think I would have wanted the oranges and lemon treatment. Anyway, at the end of the week, he recorded whether or not each sailor had scurvy. So starting with the participants of the study. The participants of the study are, well, specifically 12 sailors on James Lind ship. Okay, so what was the response variable? And again, I like to look at it as X and Y. So they had some kind of treatment, like they had the oranges or they had the salt water, seawater, and then it resulted in, do you have scurvy or do you not have scurvy? So the response would be cured of scurvy. Either you were or you were not, and that lends that self to saying it's categorical. You either yes were cured or no you were not. You went into one bucket or the other. So what kind of treatment was applied? Well, one group got the 2 oranges and 1 lemon every day, and the other group, they drank 1/2 pint of seawater each day. And that concludes our lesson on 13B, or our 13B lesson. You need to go look at your syllabus to see if you have more lessons that are due this week. If there are, keep going and remember to upload all of them to D2L. And if this was your last one, congratulations, you're done, but I'll still see you on some more videos.